Hello. So this is the commentary on the syllabus since we didn't really get to talk about it much in class. Now I've tried to make the syllabus as self-explanatory as possible, so this video is really just another way of presenting it that you might find more comfortable than simply reading it. But please do not hesitate to let me know if you have any questions or concerns or anything after reading over the syllabus and watching this video. Let's have a look. All right, so here at the top we have just some basic information, class designations, class codes, so on and so forth. You can see it says under office hours, TBD as in to be determined. I think I'm going to do my office hour on Tuesdays at 5 p.m. So if there's anything you want to talk about, if you want to, especially when we start writing papers, if you want to meet me there and Blackboard collaborate on Tuesdays at 5 p.m., talk about your work, if you have any personal concerns, if you just want more clarification on something that we covered in class, if you just want to continue talking about something that we covered in class and it's something that interests you and you just want to go deeper into it, whatever it is, come to my office hour. I heartily welcome you. And as I said, Tuesdays at 5 p.m. are when I plan to be holding my office hours. We'll talk about that more on Tuesday. And then this is the email that I use for this class. Please, again, email me here ASAP with an email address that you use and check frequently. That's so important. That's the most important thing that you have to do this week is to email me from an email address that you use and check frequently, because it's the primary means of communication in this class. I will be sending out a lot of emails over the semester, and I need to know that you're getting them. All right, so here we have some general course objectives. Now, in the weekly folders, you'll have a breakdown of the goals for each week, but all of those goals are sort of culminating in these. These are the overall goals for the class. When you leave on the last day, when you exit this class, these are the things that you want to be able to do. This is what you're striving for. This is the point of the class. To critically read, analyze, interpret, and respond to a diverse range of texts and synthesize the results in your own writing. That's what you're working towards. That's one of the main things. And that'll lead into English 10-12 when you start doing research and so on and so forth. You're going to want to write formal, persuasive, and coherent response papers and essays with strong theses. So you're striving for clarity in your writing. You're striving for unity in your writing. And you're striving for, when I say formal, I mean academic level writing, an academic level of formality. That doesn't mean it has to be all stuffy, but you know, it should adhere to a structure that is accepted by college level courses. Not just for this course, but for all of the courses that you'll be taking. You'll be writing a lot of papers throughout your college experience, and the point of this class is to get you in shape for writing papers that would be accepted in these sorts of classes. You're going to work on identifying a thesis, whether explicit or implied. Now, this is the organizing argument of a paper, of an essay. We're going to be talking a lot more about what it means to identify a thesis, and more importantly, what it means to develop your own thesis. And you're going to practice using conventionally correct grammar, punctuation, and spelling. So the reason that I phrase it like that is because language is constantly evolving, it's changing. You know, a lot of you probably spend most of your days speaking in some kind of slang or some kind of colloquialism, and that's not necessarily wrong. That's not incorrect. You know, speaking in everyday language is not a lack of intelligence, but in writing a college essay, you're going to want to adhere to certain conventions that have been institutionally agreed upon and that will be generally accepted by a college level class. That doesn't mean that one way is more intelligent than the other. That doesn't mean that using academic language is more intelligent than using everyday slang language, which is just as expressive. But you want to make a designation between the two, and you want to use language and grammar that is appropriate for the situation. Then you're going to work on editing and revising, taking into careful consideration peer and instructor critiques. Writing is always a process, so editing and revising is extremely important. You probably won't get to, so for most of the papers in this class, you'll be doing 2 drafts with the exception of the first paper. You probably won't have the time to revise them as fully as possible. But it's important to keep that in mind, that writing is a process and it takes a lot of rewriting to get to a final product. And then purposefully incorporate and integrate textual evidence into your writing using MLA documentation. Most of the writing you'll be doing in this class will be in response in some way or with regards to things that we've read. So you want to make sure that you're incorporating those other voices into your writing. It doesn't mean adopt those voices as your own, but it means enter into a dialogue with those voices, enter into a conversation with those other voices. So these are the main goals, the main overall goals for the class. Then there are other more minor goals, as you'll see in the weekly folders, when you get your weekly goals, your weekly objectives. But these are the primary goals, the main things that you want to be able to do when you leave this class in December. So all of the readings for this class will be provided for you electronically. You don't need to buy anything or anything like that. You don't need to go searching for any of the texts on your own. I will provide links for you and instructions on how to access all of the readings in this class individually in the weekly folders that you can find on Blackboard. And those are, the weekly folders are really the backbone of this class. So to look at those again, all of the weekly folders you'll find in Blackboard just by going down the navigation panel here, go to weekly folders. And you'll find them all. This is where you'll find all of the content for this class. You click on it for that week. So this is this week. So there you have the weekly goals and then the assignments that you have to do for that week. So again, for this current week, this is the most important one. Don't forget to email me. Super, super, super important. I can't stress that enough. And then for this week, you're also creating an avatar and you're posting to the intro discussion board and responding to a peer. Then you have your optional poetic treat, and then your weekly checklist and suggested schedule. So again, this is an optional thing. You don't have to turn these checklists into me. This is just a tool for you to stay on track. And as long as you can cross off everything on that checklist, you're probably doing okay. It doesn't mean you have an A if you said you can do everything on that checklist. But you're doing all right. You're definitely on the track to passing as long as you can cross everything off that checklist. But these will, of course, be different every week. Every week there will be different things in the weekly folder, even though the structure is pretty consistent. You'll always have the weekly goals. You'll always have the checklists, and all of the assignments will sort of be in the middle. So for class structure, when I say the class will be entirely synchronous, what that means is that for every scheduled class, we will meet in Blackboard Collaborate Ultra. This is in opposition to if we were to have asynchronous classes when you would do the work on your own time. We're not doing that for this class. For this class, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, unless otherwise noted, we will be meeting in Blackboard Collaborate just as if it was a regular classroom. And we'll be doing a lot of the work together, except for writing the papers and the discussion boards and anything else that might come along. But it is a synchronous class. So treat Blackboard Collaborate basically as a physical classroom. That's our classroom. We'll be meeting there 3 times a week, unless otherwise noted. And then you have a bit more information about the weekly folders, which I just showed you. These are this is the basic breakdown for the class. We're starting off with the introduction. That's what we're doing right now. And then we'll get into the common reader. So what the common reader is, every year a committee chooses a specific text that all incoming freshmen read. And they will often have events that have to do with those readings. There will be maybe even the author might come and speak. Last year they did the 1619 project, which made a lot of headlines. And we had the author do a virtual talk. I don't know what all sort of events they have planned this year for the Common Reader, but it would be good to keep an eye out and see what is upcoming in regards to that. So it's basically just introduces themes that will be pursued throughout not just the semester in this class, but more broadly throughout the whole campus, such as it is right now. And the Common Reader this year, which you'll be reading for next week, is actually two short essays. One is Elizabeth Alexander's The Trayvon Generation, and the other is Kathy Hong Park's The Slur I Never Expected to Hear in 2020. Two short but powerful pieces of writing. And then we'll be moving into the next chapter of this class, which is summary, what it means to write a purposeful and effective summary. And then we'll be digging a bit deeper with analysis and argumentation. You'll be writing your own argumentative essays. Oh, and also in this part, around the Common Reader, the personal narrative that you'll be writing as your first paper is related to the Common Reader. Kind of indirectly, but it's related. And then after analysis and argumentation, we'll be moving into compare and contrast, which will be your third big essay. And then we'll be moving into exam preparation. And the final exam will also be a compare and contrast essay, which we'll talk about more as we get closer to the time. But I don't have all the details yet. The final is something that the department prepares and puts together. But I know that it'll be a compare and contrast essay, and I know the basic structure of it, but we will talk about that as we get closer to the time. All right, so the major assignments for this class, you'll be writing 3 major essays. And the first is the personal narrative inspired by the Common Reader, as I just said. That's going to be your shortest one. It's going to be 750 to 1,000 words. And the next 2 are going to be an analytical argumentative essay and a compare and contrast essay. And each of those will be 1,000 to 1,250 words. Now, for the second and third paper, you're going to turn in 2 drafts, the first draft and the final draft. But the first paper, you're only going to turn in 1 draft. And the reason that you're only turning in 1 draft for the first paper is just because as a BCA class, we've started a bit late, so there's not really enough time to work in 2 drafts comfortably for that first paper. So for the first paper, you will only do 1 draft. But again, revision is super important, so I kind of expect you to do some of your own revisions on the personal draft. Don't just sit down on the personal narrative. Don't just sit down and pound something out in a half an hour and turn that in. Make sure that you write something, spend some time with it, revise it. In all cases, revision is super important. Writing is a process, and it shows if you participated in that process or just submitted the first thing that came into that poured out onto the paper. All essays must be double spaced and 12-point Times New Roman. So basically, just some standard font. It doesn't necessarily have to be Times New Roman, but just something basic and not weird. No Gothic font or anything like that. And formatted with 1-inch margins. So you'll probably have to set the double spacing, but on most word processors, these things are kind of just standard and automatic. So just don't change it. This will be the most frequent assignment you have to do, the reading response discussion boards. Kind of starting this week with the intro discussion board, even though it's not a reader response. It's you're posting to the discussion forums on Blackboard, which to show you how to do that again. So you'll be able to do it in the weekly folder. You have 2 ways of getting to the discussion boards. You can go straight to the discussion boards, and then you'll see them all lined up. So there's only 1 so far, but there will be more. The easier way to do it is just by going to the current weekly folder, where all your other assignments will be for that week, and just clicking on it there at the top, and it'll take you right there. So some of you have already posted to the intro discussion board, which I'm very happy to see. And you can, when you go to post your original, when you go to write your original post, you have a subject line. Just put, it doesn't matter what you put, but you have to put something, otherwise I won't let you submit. And then you can write whatever you want in response to the prompt. And that's it. Now you're always going to have to respond to a peer for every single one of the discussion boards, unless otherwise noted. But I don't think I will ever note otherwise. You will always have to respond to a peer. Now, in order to do that, you go to the person's original post, you read it, simply hit reply, and you'll have a space there to reply. You write your response, which will usually be a minimum of 75 words, 75 to 150. That's usually sufficient for a decent response. Then you submit it, and there you go. Bada boom, bada bing. All right, so make sure that you know how to do the discussion boards, because it's one of the key components of the class. You're doing one for pretty much every single reading. You're going to do 2 summaries, and we'll talk more about what makes an effective summary, a meaningful summary, why summaries matter as we get into that section of the class. But those will each be 250 to 500 words. And then you'll have a final exam, which, as I said, will be a compare and contrast essay, which under normal circumstances you would write during a 2-hour period. You'd be given 2 texts. You'd be given a long text ahead of time, which you would read before sitting down for that 2-hour session. And then you'd be given a short text within that 2-hour session, and you'd compare and contrast the two. What they did last fall for online classes was they just distributed both of the texts, 2 texts, and you had to write a compare and contrast essay about them and submit it. You didn't have to do it in a 2-hour period. You had, if I recall correctly, it was something like a week you had to write a compare and contrast essay. All right, so participation, attendance, and sincerity of effort are extremely important. Even though this class is online, I expect that you participate to the full extent of your abilities and technological responses. I do expect, as does the Brooklyn College Academy, that you have your cameras on during our synchronous sessions. During all of our class meetings, you should have your camera on. It's basically a requirement, so I will be calling you out on that. If you don't have your cameras on, you should use your mics if possible. If you're doing this on campus or at school, then there's no reason that you shouldn't have these things operating. And use the chat panels. Even if you use your mics to speak, you should still use the chat panels as another means of participating, just putting in short comments and things like that in the chat panel. But I expect you to be active participants in this class. In some ways, you have to make an extra special effort in the online classes more than in-person classes, because it's harder for me to gauge if you're listening. There's different kinds of passive participation that you can get away with in an in-person class that you can't really get away with in these virtual classes, because it doesn't make it self-evident. You need to really put forth that extra effort to show that you're participating. It's really important. Attendance is tallied by your evidence presence in our synchronous sessions, so it doesn't just mean logging into the Blackboard Collaborate classrooms on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays. It also means, using those cameras, making it clear that you're actually in the room, so to speak. You are allowed 2 excused absences. After that, if you miss a 3rd class or more, I record every class, so I can provide you a recording of the class, and you'll have some alternate assignment. Usually, it will be some kind of review questions that you'll have to answer in response to the recording of the class, but it might be something else. So basically, you can make up absences beyond the 2 excused absences if you need to, by getting in touch with me after you've missed that class and I can, give you the information on how to make it up. So, in short, be present in every way possible. Participation is vital to a worthwhile online learning environment. Not only will you reap rich rewards from the class, but the class itself will in turn be especially enriched by the unique contributions that only you can make. Right? It's a group effort. The class is only as valuable as you make it be. Um, the more participation we have, the more beneficial the class is to everyone. The more voices we have, the greater the dialogue, then the more we can learn how to craft our own arguments, right? One of the key points of this class is to craft an argument. And in order to craft an argument such as we are, in the sense that we're crafting arguments, you have to take part in a conversation. And the only way we can have a conversation is with full participation. For all of your assignment submissions, unless otherwise notified, which I don't think you will ever be otherwise notified, submit everything through Blackboard in the appropriate places, which generally, almost always, you'll be able to do through the weekly folder. So the written set of instructions, the video tutorial on how to do this, I included that in yesterday's email, and I'll go over the first few assignment submissions, showing you how to do it. But I'm not going to spend a lot of class time after that going over how to submit, because it's going to be pretty uniform, and I don't want to waste time every time there's a submission, every time there's an assignment, going over how to submit it. I'll do it the first few times, but then after that, you should know what you're doing. Submit all papers and drafts as .doc.x or PDF files only. So that's papers and drafts. That's not the discussion boards. The discussion boards you will enter into the content fields. But for the paper and drafts, please do not just write them out in the content fields in Blackboard. I'll show you what if you do that, then I won't be able to comment in the text itself. I'll only be able to write an in response. So especially with the drafts, the first drafts of your papers, it's really important that you submit them as one of these types of documents. Also, please don't please don't use any other type of file, like a dot file or something like that. I have to do a whole conversion process. It's complicated, and I run the risk of getting viruses. Please only do these types of documents. Now, for the discussion boards, you can enter them directly into the content fields, as I just showed you a minute ago with the discussion boards. All right, so in terms of late work, you are allowed one late submission of a paper up to a week with a 5% penalty. And you have a week to get in a piece of late work. So if you turn it in a week late, 5% every day, that's 35% reduction, but you still get credit, which is better than nothing. Late drafts will not result in lengthened revision time, so be sure to turn in all drafts when they are due. So in other words, if you turn in the first draft late, you don't get extended time to turn in the second draft. So it's in your best interest to turn in the first draft at the due date so that you have plenty of time to revise. And take my comments into consideration and so forth. So don't turn in anything more than a week late. And if you consistently turn things in late, that's going to have a severe impact on your overall participation grade. The reason that turning things in on time is so important and keeping up with the schedule is because everything in this class builds on what came before it. So if you're falling behind, you're not ready for the next step. So you want to make sure that you're keeping up on the schedule so that you're ready for the next thing on the schedule. So, summaries lead into analytical argumentative essays. Analytical argumentative essays lead into compare and contrast, which is just a different kind of argumentative essay. So make sure that you're keeping up on everything and you're ready for the next step. So this is the grading breakdown. So basically what's happening here is you'll get points on everything that you turn in. And basically, you're dealing with 1,000 points. So the first paper is worth 100 points. That's 10% of your grade. 100 points out of the total 1,000 points that you can get for the whole class. So when you see second paper, including the draft, the first draft will be worth a lot less than the second draft because it's a work in progress. So if it's worth 15% of your grade, it'll be like the first draft will be worth 30 points, and the second draft will be worth 120 points. A total of 150 points, 15% of your final grade. So you can read through that and see how the points break down. 2 summaries, each of the summaries are worth 50 points each, total of 100 points. C- is the lowest possible passing grade for this course. If you get less than a C-, what it is an NC, meaning no credit, which is not the same as an F. An F grade means that you haven't done all of the work, or you've been completely flippant in the work that you've done, and it's not clear to me that you've put forth an honest effort. An F grade will affect your GPA negatively. A grade of NC means that you have to take the class again, but it doesn't affect your GPA in any way. Whether you get an NC or an F, you'll have to take the class again. You can take the class up to 3 times. This might be slightly different for you BCA folks, but this is the standard Brooklyn College grading policy for English 1010 and English 1012. If you have any religious beliefs or observances that deem it necessary for you to miss a class and which are not already incorporated into the Brooklyn College schedule, please let me know and I will excuse that absence. But it's really important that you let me know, otherwise I can't excuse it. If you don't let me know, it won't be excused. But as long as you let me know that you're missing in class because of religious observance, then I will have no problem excusing it. But you just have to let me know. Plagiarism, we'll talk about this a bit more, but simply don't do it. It's one of the quickest ways to fail this class and to fail in college generally. And I take it very seriously, and you would definitely fail an assignment that you get caught plagiarizing on. But let's hope that we don't have to cross. And this is the Brooklyn College statement on plagiarism. If you're ever uncertain if something constitutes plagiarism or not, just talk to me about it. We can figure it out. It's better to let me know that you're uncertain and we can work out whether or not it is plagiarism than just doing it and getting caught in an act of plagiarism inadvertently. Sometimes there's the most common kind of plagiarism where you just copy the words straight off of something else. But there's another kind of plagiarism where you're copying ideas without due citations. You can read the student bereavement policy here. God forbid that comes up for you, but if it does, just let me know and we'll figure out what needs to be done. So general resources here. Again, my office hours I'm going to be doing on Tuesday at 5 p.m. The Learning Center could be a great resource for you. When we get to writing the papers, they can give you another set of eyes to help you revise your paper, give you help you edit it, and just generally help improve your writing. I will generally give extensive feedback on your drafts, but sometimes it's just helpful to have somebody else look at it and maybe spend a little bit more time with it. Let's see, if you're registered with the Center for Student Disabilities, please let me know ASAP so that we can make all necessary accommodations. That will never be a problem, but you have to let me know so that we can do what is necessary to help you get the most out of this class. And then we come down into the class schedule, which is just a breakdown of the readings, the assignments. So you can see for next week, we're getting into the Common Reader. You'll have your first reading response discussion board, and then we'll be doing close reading and annotation practices. We're talking about autobiography versus memoir, and so on and so forth. So look ahead. I'm not going to go over it all now, but just look ahead, take note of the readings that are coming See if you're familiar with anything. Maybe try to look up the readings on your own so you can determine the length of some of these things. And just plan ahead. Just plan ahead. That's what this is about. But make sure that you check the schedule frequently. Make sure that you know when the papers are due. Make sure that you know when the reading responses are due. The reading responses are the discussion boards. Make sure that you know the readings will always be due before class. So let's see. So for October 26th, say, when you see James Baldwin, Stranger in the Village is due by October 26th, that means before class on October 26th. And the reading response discussion board is before class. So that you're prepared to work with that reading in whatever activity we might be doing for that day, whatever class discussion we might be having. Yeah, so for next week, you have the Common Reader, which is 2 short essays you'll need to read before Tuesday, before our class on Tuesday. And I will be making a weekly folder for that and mentioning it in an email. But make sure you just go through this on your own. And note that this is only the primary assignments, themes, and readings only. And there might be minor assignments that come along as we go. All right. So that's that. Again, please do not hesitate to ask me any questions you might have. Let me know any thoughts or concerns you might have. And I hope this was fully informative and you know what you are doing to start this class.